When the pandemic started, people started telling me, you've done your microbiology, why don't you find a cure to the virus?
I think that's the best question. Yeah, I think that takes the cake.
I was
Yes.
just like, it's not a joke,
Yes. Thank you so much for being here, Miss Nikita Thadani. It's
Thank
a
you.
pleasure to have you. So you've done your master's in microbiology, right?
Yes.
So how does a person get to a master's in microbiology?
So, anyone who's interested in science would choose science as their subject area after school. Um, Once they do that, gradually they decide, like, of course, they do research and find out what fields are present for bachelor's, for masters. I mean, so then you understand what you're interested in, right? So, microbiology was a very new thing when I started. So there was microbiology and biotechnology where I had to choose between, but because biotechnology had a lot of maths in it as well, so I eliminated it. Microbiology was very interesting because it had to do everything that I have been wanting to study about. So that's how I selected it. So yeah, it depends on what interests you maximum.
But is there any particular reason why you gravitated towards microbiology and biology in particular? In spite of doing science, you could have done engineering or anything else,
Yeah,
right?
these
So
things never interested me. So MBBS was one thing that was in my list, but the cutoff was too high, and there's a lot of problem in the education system. So I didn't want to. I opted not to take MBBS, but that's something which is very interesting for me. But so science has always interested me since school. Biology, I've always been very interested. I scored the maximum always in biology. And after that also, yes, in 11th, 12th, I did feel a little demotivated and a little discouraged because of the maths that is there, maths and physics. But over time I figured and I understood that there are fields where you don't require maths, physics, chemistry. So microbiology was one of them, which had everything that I wanted to study. It was very new, it was very raw, and I wanted to explore and take up the challenge, because people said that scope of microbiology is very low over here and all of that. So yeah, that's how I got my interest in the field.
okay, what I found interesting is that you mentioned that one main reason that you didn't pursue an MBBS or anything in the medical sector is because of problems in our education industry.
Yeah.
So could you elaborate on what problems were you referring to?
So it's basic the entrance exams. There is a caste system in it. So people who have a specific caste registered, they have a lower cutoff. So what knowledge do they have, that doesn't matter. But if they fall into that specific caste and if they fall under that cutoff, so then they get selected into courses. So that's something which is very unreasonable, I feel. Like I myself, when I wanted to apply for PhD over here, I gave an entrance exam twice. So first I scored a little low, of course, but the second time, just because of 2 marks and I was in the open category, that's the reason I didn't get in, because of this caste system which is present. And people who scored lower than me, they got the seat because they had the caste. So since then I was like, never mind.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people must have experienced what you experienced at some point in time.
Yes.
Because of the way our
Definitely.
education system is based on caste. Anyway, so before you finished your masters in microbiology, what did you pursue your bachelor's in?
Microbiology.
Okay, so in order to pursue, like you mentioned, there are 2 options, right? There's microbiology and biotechnology. So are there more options that you can choose after you've completed your 12th grade in science?
Yeah, sure. So if you take science in 12th, you can definitely go ahead for MBBS. That's one of the options. You can go for engineering. There's astrophysics, there's astronomy, there's aeronautical engineering. So science is the basis of all these sectors which are non-financial and non-commerce related or industry related. So anything which does not fall into these categories can be taken after science. 12th standard in science.
You've done your degree from Fergusson College in Pune. So was there any particular reason why you chose that college, or is that one of the few colleges that offers this major?
At that time, this was one of the colleges that was offering this field. And secondly, the name of Fergusson College has been very good. I mean, the education that they provide is very good, the quality of the education. So that's the reason I selected Fergusson.
What are some of the other options that are there, not only in the city and not only in the state, but also in the country, that you are aware of, that offer microbiology as a subject or a major?
So there are many places, but one of the best universities is in Gujarat, I think. I don't remember the name of the university, but that is one of the most famous universities, and it's very hard to get in over there. It's like the level of IIM and all these universities. In Pune, there's University of Pune, which now offers bachelor's as well as master's. Before they didn't have this. And other than that, there are a few more universities in Mumbai, Nagpur. Yes, yeah, I think these are the good ones.
How does microbiology differ from, let's say you mentioned biotechnology, or any other specification that you could choose in biology? What are the major differences?
So microbiology and biotechnology, for example, they are there's a thin line of differentiation between these two fields. Microbiology deals more in-depth study of microorganisms, but biotechnology is overall. Biotechnology deals more with tissue culturing. There's a lot of plant study or botanical studies in that. There's biostatistics, a lot of biostatistics in biotechnology. So biotechnology has various subsections that can be taken under consideration, but when it comes to microbiology, it's very specific. So you have so the basis of the whole field is the use of or the study of microorganisms. So we learn what we study exactly in microorganisms, or the applications of these microorganisms. Either they can be used in different like fields, like medical fields. They can be used in discovering certain kind of studies and all of that. So it's application and the direct study, but it is very specific to only microorganisms.
Okay, so how much do you think is the scope of studying biology or pursuing a career in anything biology related in India as compared to the rest of the world?
Unfortunately, the scope is not very great in India as of now. When we started off, it was a little, it was way lower than what it is right now. So that's a good improvement. But it still hasn't reached that level because the thing is that these fields are a little underestimated in our country. The scope for microbiology is very slim over here, but when we explore abroad has a great and a very high scope, and like for example in Europe, the need for microbiologists is higher than any other place in the world currently. So that's how it is. Abroad there's a lot of scope in microbiology, biotechnology, environmental science, but because these fields are very underestimated in India, that's the reason the scope is very less here.
Okay, agreed. But at the same time, you mentioned that Fergusson College is one of the better colleges, not only in the city but in the country generally, and for microbiology in particular. So what exactly, could you walk us through what did they teach you day-to-day wise or semester wise?
So the semester was, so we had 2 semesters per year, and every semester had a different area of microbiology that we used to touch base upon. So like for example, one semester we used to study, we had a portion or syllabus for virology and taxonomy, and then one semester, which was the second year of my masters, that was very important, was more towards cancer biology, how everything in cancer happens, the different diseases even. Then there was a little bit of a twist in the whole study where we had IPR, intellectual property rights. So we had a semester on that as well, where we had to study all these things. So why we were made to study all these things is because going forward, if we would conduct any research, it was very important that we understand what is copyright, what is trademark, what is patenting. So that's the reason we had this. So the entire semester, or both the years of masters and bachelors, of course, was divided into such things.
Now, during the course of your study, what would you say is your personal favorite thing to learn or that you did?
So my favorite has always been genetics, and I've always been very interested, and more specifically, how genetics or your entire hereditary and everything transmission of genes, they play a role in lifestyle diseases, in development of lifestyle diseases. In fact, there was one professor who had come from university, and he had a guest lecture in our college, and he was I think his research was on diabetes and how these genetic parameters play a very important role in contributing to the disease. So I had decided that if I want to do PhD, I'd go for this specific topic, because this is something which is very important currently with the lifestyle that we all are living right now, and I think it's very interesting. So yeah, so my favorite is genetics and how it contributes to the lifestyle diseases.
When you say the word genetics, I think even people who don't know anything about genetics, the first word that comes to mind is CRISPR.
Yeah.
Right. So for those watching that don't know what CRISPR is, could you just give a brief summary of what CRISPR is, and what are when it started, and what are the applications that are possible?
So CRISPR is basically genome editing, and so the basis of CRISPR is when human genes are fused with one another to create something new. So I don't specifically know when it started, but all I know is that CRISPR is the basis of genome editing, and along with having advantages, so currently there is a lot of knowledge, or there's a lot of information on fusion of animal genes or plant genes, where we have these genetically modified crops and all these things. But something which is under a lot of debate and controversy is the fusion of human genes, because it's been observed, I mean, from what I've read in research papers, that people, it's very bizarre if people try to fuse human cells into an animal model, trying to imbalance nature, which is not at all acceptable. So this is what I know about CRISPR. So it tends more towards the genome editing bit of it, and it's a technique, it's a molecular biology technique, and it enables scientists to fuse cells, animal cells, plant cells, as I said, to develop genetically modified organisms and plants. Yeah.
Okay. So before this question, I had asked you what is your favorite part of your course of study, right? So if I had to flip that question and ask you, what are some of the things, or what is the one thing that you didn't enjoy much, or that you outright disliked during your course of study, what would that be?
Intellectual property rights. I used to get so bored when we used to study that. Oh my god, because that was a lot of so it was about patenting. There was a lot of jurisdiction, and there was I don't even remember exactly. So we had all these ISO standards, what are the specifications, and we had to study all that. So
is you didn't like it because it was a lot of theory and not enough hands-on practical work, whereas the rest of your course required you to do a lot of practical work, is it?
Yeah, so I enjoy what I understand, like if you understand what you're reading, it's good. You enjoy learning a little more about that. But when it comes to this, is very standardized, like ISO 9001, this is what it is, that's it, nothing beyond that, nothing lesser than that. So I never enjoyed that.
Agreed. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so to all the children, or to all the teenagers, or even the aspiring adults who are interested in biology for whatever reason, out of all the sciences, and they want to pursue their studies or their career in biology, what are the options that they have, and what is some of the advice that you would give to them?
So there are so many options that they can explore. There are newer fields which have come into picture now in the recent years. There's a lot of what people are again unaware of is environmental science. They underestimate the study or the field of research a lot, but this is something that our country needs the most. The rise in awareness is something that our country needs the most. So yes, there are large number of fields which have come into play in the recent years. So I advise that, if they are interested in science, they should definitely do a little more research and not stick to the cliche MBBS and engineering and physics and everything that people really motivate their kids to do. But I think there are newer fields which are way more interesting, and if a person would like to explore, then definitely they should go ahead and do a little more research, see what makes sense, and then choose the field.
Okay. So now you've done your bachelor's and master's in the exact same field. How much more did you learn, and how much was the difference between doing a bachelor's in the same field and rather than doing a master's?
So bachelor was very generic, to be honest. Bachelor's had botany, which was plant studies. There was zoology, which was animal studies, and there was biostatistics, which was maths based, and there was chemistry. So bachelor's in microbiology has everything, so that we get an introduction to everything possible that we can explore further for our masters. But so yeah, and when it comes to masters, it's very specific to the field. As I told you, that it's only about microorganisms. It's what can we do in microorganisms, and what are the derivations or what are the applications that we can use microorganisms for. Because so people who are very unaware and people who just take the field just like that, so it's something which is very enlightening for them as well, because after taking the field or the study, you understand that okay, what we really underestimate bacteria, viruses, but that's something that people shouldn't underestimate, and that's what the world has seen now in the past 2 years. So yeah.
So when you had to submit or choose a topic rather for your dissertation or thesis for your master's, what topic did you do?
It's very funny. Okay, so I chose so my topic was on dental plaque and how Listerine and Colgate plaques and everything, so how beneficial or how effective they are versus the essential oils that we have. Because again, use of essential oils and tulsi, neem, and they have those some sandalwood or something sticks that they use on the teeth. It's very underestimated, because that use of these products falls into another branch of science which is called as complementary medicine. So this versus this, so commercially used products versus the natural products, and how effective they are on dental plaque. So that was my dissertation on.
Don't stop now, because you've got me very interested. I want to know exactly what is it that you found out and how you found out, and what are some of the recommendations that you could give to us, and what are some of the changes that you've made in your own personal life after the findings that you made.
Yeah.
So please don't stop now, please.
Yeah. So because we were doing the dissertation only in college, the apparatus and the components that we had to carry out the experiments was very limited. So the study that we carried out was very limited. But to summarize the entire thing, 3 months experimentation, we figured that essential oil is something which is more effective as compared to the commercially used products. So if people are listening, this is something that they should actually follow. And so we used eucalyptus oil, we used cinnamon oil, and and we used tulsi, whole tulsi, and we saw that this was more effective against so we had a petri plate where we put the samples, and we had to see the growth of the organisms. We measured that. So using these products, the growth was maximally reduced as compared to the Listerine and everything. Another thing that we saw is that the use of Listerine and these commercially used products was just stopping the growth for a specific period of time, but the growth would resume, or so they used to become dormant. They used to start growing again after 1-2 days when the effect or the effect of the components in these commercially used products started reducing. So that's how we figured that okay, maybe the organic products are more beneficial. So yeah, so my research, unfortunately, I couldn't take it ahead for publication, because as I said, we had a great limitation to carry out the experiment. So, but from what I saw in my experimentation, I was very satisfied that what I believe on is actually the truth. So I have a strong belief on complementary medicine. as compared to the modern conventional scientific techniques that are used. So yeah, ever since I started using, so Colgate has this a different, I don't remember the name now, but they have a different bottle which has, it's a mixture of all these, it's a concoction of oil something. So and these are essential oils, so I started using that as compared to Listerine and all the other things. So I highly recommend this now.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up because I don't remember exactly where I saw this or where I read this, but the froth that you have in most household items, let's say for shampoo, soap, or even your toothpaste, I think you might be knowing this already. It's to give there's no rational reason for it apart from the fact that it gives the consumer a sense that something is happening.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure you already know this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Also, a lot of the ingredients that are there in commercial products, like you mentioned, especially the sulfates and the parabens.
Correct.
In fact, instead of doing good, they do more harm than good.
Harm, yeah.
Right. So could you give us a little, a bit more information regarding some of the knowledge that you have?
So all that I know is that sulfate and parabens, mostly when it is present in shampoos, it really damages the hair. And some people say that sulfate is really good and it improves the texture of the hair, but that's completely false because that is something which really ruins the texture of the hair. And the other products, when it comes to the froth that you're mentioning, again, that's just a publicity stunt because as you said that people find it more satisfying when they see a
Sorry
lot
to
of
interrupt, but there was a study. So the reason why companies started using it in their products is there was a study conducted, and there was a control group which were given the exact same product without the froth, and there was another group which was given the same product with the froth. And I think, I don't remember the exact figures, but there was an overwhelming majority of the people that preferred the product which had the froth. So that is the main reason. They feel it's like the placebo effect. The people feel that this product is better or it's doing more good than a product which is not. So that's the only reason.
Yeah, but it more than this, I think it depends on the ingredients the product is made of. So if the product has all the necessary components, which does good, then having froth or not having froth doesn't matter.
Also, not only are they not good for us and they're harmful for us, in fact, most of the ingredients in the ingredient list behind these commercial products are not good for the environment, right?
Yes,
because
exactly.
they don't break down easily, and the water that they're discharged in, it contaminates the water that they're discharged in. So could you give us a little bit about that as well?
So yeah, one of the main reasons is hard water. Most of the places now, I'm just speaking about our city specifically, they have hard water, so you need to have water softeners, very specific. Hard water, when it reacts with all these components, so all these chemicals which are present in the products, when hard water reacts with these chemicals, it causes destruction tenfold what the chemical compounds in the thing or in a shampoo or soap they would do individually. So I think this is the most I can say about it.
I think what you said regarding how underestimated biology in general is, not only in India but generally, makes a lot of sense, and it's our duty to educate people that don't know about it, especially now.
Absolutely.
Because of these 2 years. And if you look at it, essentially everything is biology, right?
Exactly.
I mean, what is biology? Biology is the molecular study or the makeup of everything that is around us.
Correct.
So everything around us is biology. So the applications and the implications of biology are just endless.
Yes.
So what are some of the most absurd, bizarre misconceptions that you've heard from people, or some of the most funny questions that you've received from people when you tell them that you've pursued your master's in microbiology and you're someone who's also working in the same field?
Yeah. So one person asked me, what do you study? So I was like, I've done my master's in microbiology. So that person was like, what is microbiology? And I was just like, microbiology, if you break the two, it's very easy to understand. I had to explain that. Then people come asking me that, can you see bacteria like I'm like they are 0.1 millimeter micrometer. You cannot see them with with naked eye. You need to see it under a microscope. It's called as a microorganism. The only way you can see the microorganism is using a microscope, not otherwise. Then they say that the other question that I've received is, why do they say you should cover your mouth while coughing or sneezing? So I was like, firstly, that's a basic etiquette that you should have. Secondly, I'm not exaggerating, but with every sneeze, a person who doesn't have common cold, every sneeze generates 1,000 bacteria minimum. Now imagine that if you don't cover your mouth and you just sneeze in the open, and if you and me are standing across each other, so 1,000 bacteria are emitted. How the bacteria, so bacteria are very sly like that, like any little bit opening in your skin, anything, they can just go from anywhere. So it's very harmful. So that's why I've told the person that these are the two main reasons, that you make sure that when you're coughing or sneezing, please cover your mouth. Don't do it openly. The other question I've come across very weird questions, to be honest. When the pandemic started, people started telling me, you've done your microbiology, why don't you find a cure to the virus?
I think that's the best question, and I think that takes the cake.
I was just like, it's not a joke,
Yes.
and viruses in general have a very complex structure, and viruses are even slyer than bacteria, where they change how they change their conformation, you don't even understand. It's that much. So when researchers were working on COVID, people who have come across or come till a stage of at least getting a vaccine, hats off to these people. And just a general this thing, that if people have studied microbiology, it's not that they can do research on bacteria sitting at home, because we cannot catch them. Firstly, they're not visible to the naked eye, and there's a lot of background that is needed to carry out a research, or to so people who've done microbiology, and if they must have come across this question that, why aren't you finding the cure for the virus? It's not a joke, so just ignore such questions.
Okay. Apart from the things that you already mentioned, is what I found really fascinating is the topic that you chose your dissertation from. Now that you're someone who is not only studied but also working in the field, what are some of the common practices that you see around you that are wrong, or in your personal life, some of the things that you do really differently than the average person, or something that you really recommend, that you see around that shouldn't be or should be done or implemented?
So washing hands is something which I always used to do from the beginning. Now it's become too evident because of the whole COVID situation. But some things like we've kept the glass open. This is something which should not be done, because there are plenty of microorganisms which might have already entered the water, which would in turn go into our system, and anyway, we can have the water still. So this is one of the things. Never, if something is standing still for a long time, never go and eat or drink that, because that's the worst thing that you can do. The things that have come into picture now of sanitizing, washing your hands regularly, wearing a mask, it is something which should always be followed. And
but apart from the stuff that has come to light now, even when we talk about basic hygiene or some related to nutrition, like how you mentioned that stagnant things should not be consumed, something that we average or normal people might never know or come across of.
The thing is that the awareness, that's what I'm saying, that now the awareness has greatly increased. Like I can give another example of milk. So when we heat or boil milk, what people do is they boil the milk and they immediately refrigerate it, but that is not something that should be done. It should be kept outside for some time. But again, the some time is only when the milk becomes warm enough. Like they have we call it a cheek touch, or you can try to test it over here. When you put the milk over here on your hand, and if it's just warm, then you refrigerate it. That's because if you refrigerate it immediately, the growth of the microorganism stops, but it starts again when you get it out of the refrigerator. But when you allow the milk to warm a little bit, the microorganisms just start regenerating, and at that time when you refrigerate it, that ensures that the growth of the microorganisms completely stop. So this is a very This is a very common example that I can give. Apart from this, everything is very, um, like everything is very much out in the open now. Stagnant thing is one of the other things that I could think of. And yeah, as of now, I can't think of anything else.
So I have a few other friends who are in a similar field as yours, and they told me that if you look at life around you in general, or even at in human skin, there are so many bacteria, microorganisms and viruses present at any given point in time that it will be impossible for you to live, because humans are fragile creatures, but at the same time we're also very resilient.
Yes.
And it's a paradox, with the amount of things that can kill you, and how delicate humans are, we're somehow still alive.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that is how I'd like to put it. So yeah, I'd like to go back to your dissertation. Out of all the topics that you could have done your thesis or dissertation on, what are some of the other topics that you considered before you narrowed down on this one, and why did you specifically narrow down on this one?
So, to be very honest, I had thought that I would carry out my research more on vaginal pH, and because again our country lacks awareness about self hygiene, and infections are vaginal infections are very very high in number. So I thought that I would want to go ahead with a research in that, but because of the limitations and the restrictions we had in the college, I couldn't conduct that research. So that's the reason I came down to dental plaque, because after vaginal infections, dental plaque is something which is very common, and people are not aware about flossing and everything, like maintaining oral health. So this was another topic which interested me, and that's the reason I selected this topic.
Okay, in fact, I find the topic that you could have chosen very interesting.
Yes.
What are some of the major reasons that you would say that vaginal health is something that needs to be addressed more in this country? And this is just something that came in my mind. Is it something to do with a lot with the temperature also? Because ours is a very humid climate. Is that one of the contributing factors, or it's a lot of things?
Yes, that is one of the contributing factors, but along with that, it's personal hygiene, which is a very important factor that contributes to the increase in vaginal infections. Again, the very basic reason that this is occurring is because of the lack of awareness that people have. If you of course you're very well aware of the fact that the rural areas are places which are extremely susceptible to these infections. Again it's because of the hygiene level, the water that is used. So this is something which is lack of awareness is something which is the main problem that contributes to a high number of vaginal infections, along with of course personal hygiene.
Okay, so what happens, like what are the dangers of neglecting something as important as your vaginal health? Like what could go wrong?
So cancer is something which is the first hit, or the first thing that comes after if vaginal health is not taken care of. Along with that, urinary tract infections is again something which comes under it tops the list. These two things are the main derivations, I can say, if vaginal health is not looked out for. And it's very important that we raise awareness on this. And again, this is something which is a very underestimated topic. Cervical cancer is one of the derivations of not taking care of vaginal health. So yeah, this is something which should be considered.
What are some of the things that can be easily implemented or changed, especially in a country like ours, and especially in the rural areas? For instance, one that I can think at the top of my head is the taboo and the stigma around periods, and the fact that a lot of people don't have access to even sanitary pads or tampons.
Yes,
so
correct.
That is one. And is that a factor? Firstly, that's my first question. Is that a factor in deciding your vaginal health? And secondly, what are some of the things that can be done to maintain, like what is a perfect routine, or like what are some of the must do's to maintain good vaginal health?
So, is that a factor? The answer to your question is yes, that's a very important factor. So, this stigma around periods and everything, people, in the rural areas, it's not paid attention to. Instead, people are ill treated. Those people who get the periods, they are ill treated. That's very silly, actually. But unfortunately, this is again because they are not aware of what are the specifications of what can happen if this is not considered. I think using, not having access to sanitary napkins, tampons, it's very obvious rural areas would not have access. But the least that they can do is at least use clean clothes. Clothes. When I say clothes, I mean something that will, prevent the spread of the blood, that you get when you are in your menstrual cycle. So at least use of clean products is something that can be encouraged. I think that can be found anywhere. Another thing, factors that may help to contribute to maintaining vaginal health is making sure that you use products that balances the vaginal pH, because something that is again something which is very important. When you're just in the so before you start getting your periods, the vaginal pH changes, which again makes the vagina very susceptible to yeast infections. Yeast infections are something which is very, very bad for the vagina, and overall it causes urinary tract infections. So using products that will help you maintain your pH of the vagina, make sure that vagina is always cleaned every day, twice, thrice, how many times. One thing which should always be forbidden is the use of harsh soaps, because that is something again that disrupts the pH of the vagina, and if the pH falls more than the normal pH, that also contributes to the susceptibility of getting urinary tract infections, because if the pH falls more, the harmful microorganisms are attracted to that lower pH and they begin to grow and in turn cause a disease. So these three are the most important things that may contribute to vaginal health.
I'd like to mention that the reason why vaginal pH is so important is, firstly, that's how vaginas have been created by nature.
Yes.
The reason why they have alkaline pH is because sperm is acidic.
Yes,
and
exactly.
it is the vagina is designed to kill the sperm that enters. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, we know that biology is everywhere, like there's just no escaping it. In fact, biology is such a general term.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the future of biology, microbiology in specific? And that it has the power to change not only things around us but humans with the power of CRISPR. So what I'm trying to ask you is, where do you see the future of this sector or industry, or even the future of humanity, because of the progress that we're making in biology? Are you getting what I'm trying to ask you?
So I can very confidently say that the future of not just microbiology but science in general is to reach a stage where we have a cure for cancer, AIDS, and all these lifestyle derived diseases, because it's progressing, science is progressing so quickly that and with the help of CRISPR, gene editing, scientists are constantly researching on ways that cancer can be brought to a dormancy, and I can very confidently say that 10-20 years down the line, hopefully we do have a cure for all these diseases which now don't have any cure. So I'm someone who will always encourage people to only take science, because I'm very biased towards the field, because I know the capabilities that this field has. So yeah, I think it's a long way to go.
Okay. So finally we get to your work, and you're currently working at a company called Springer Nature.
Yes.
So could you tell us and the viewers, what is it that you do exactly?
Okay, so Springer Nature is a scientific manuscript publishing company. So what we publish is the research of authors. So when authors conduct a specific research, they always have to pen down this research in the form of a manuscript. Manuscript is nothing but raw data. So this raw data is given or submitted in our organization. So our organization, Springer Nature, it deals with certain journals, okay, and these journals are the places where these manuscripts are deposited in. So what we do at the organization, so there are, so the organization has various aspects. It has marketing, IT, everything. What I work in too is editorial services mainly. So when we receive these manuscripts from authors, we have a team which assesses the parameters of this manuscript. We need to make sure that there's no copied content, which we call as plagiarism. Because if the manuscript has to be published in our organization or in our journal, it's very important that it is not copied from elsewhere. That's one of the things that we look at. That comes more towards the manuscript screening part. Then when we feel that the the manuscript fulfills all the parameters of the journal, we do some additional quality checks on the manuscript to make sure that the authors, whatever research they've presented, it adheres to the journal policies. And after that, the manuscript goes out for peer review. Now, peer review is a very important and critical part for any manuscript publication. Wherein, so in peer reviews, we have editors and reviewers from all over the world working with the journals that we are working with. So they have a tie-up. This job is completely voluntary, and editors and reviewers, they review the paper and they make sure that whatever the authors have claimed in the manuscript and whatever research they've conducted, whatever data they've presented, everything is valid, everything is up to the modern science mark, and every manuscript which is given in the journal or so in the journal, it has to present something newer than the already existing research. So if it's on COVID and if we have 5, 6 or 50, 60 papers coming in just about research on let's say how social distancing helps to reduce the transmission of the virus, our journal, so as an organization, authors are our customers, so we are obviously going to accept it, but it's not necessary that editors and reviewers may accept this research, because there are already existing research that have proven that social distancing helps in reducing the transmission of COVID virus. So everyone wants everything, people want new, so editors, reviewers make sure that this new is given or presented to the scientific audience. Once this peer review is completed, then the author's manuscript may get published or it may even get rejected. So what we do on the other side is make sure that the quality check is carried out. The manuscript, we are able to secure these reviewers and editors who are valid firstly, and they have acquaintance with the field that the authors have presented their research in. And once this is done, then our job is to make sure that we have good amount of coordination with these editors, reviewers, authors, and make sure that the manuscript is published into the journal. So that's what my
I think that was wonderfully put. And it just goes to show the people that don't know how rigorous the entire process from start to finish is. When when a scientist says that, okay, this is why we have to do a certain thing, people just assume, and all these Facebook warriors and people on YouTube and comment, and they're like, no, this is not how it's supposed to be, and they don't know how much work and effort has gone into the study that is actually published, where this fact is coming from. But that being said, on the other side, humans are inherently flawed, and we have biases and we have agendas and we're corruptible. Okay, that's how the human nature is, that's how we are as a species. There have been a lot of cases and instances, and I want to know your opinion on this and how much you know about this, where a lot of the funds and grants for the research has been funded by big pharma or people or companies with certain agendas. I'll give an example. We know it is a fact now, widely known fact, that sugar is not very good for the human body. The recommended intake of sugar by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration from the United States, I don't know about India, is 25 grams for an adult that is following a regular diet of 2000 calories per day. So now there was a research conducted by a team of scientists, I don't know when, I don't know who they were which said that sugar is not that bad for the ultimate bottom line, or the conclusion was that sugar is not as bad as we previously thought it was. Now, a lot of people didn't know that this grant was, or whatever grant they received, or this was actually funded by the Coca-Cola company. So I want to know if there are more instances that you know of when this happens, and what are the consequences, and to what extent does this happen?
See, the more we think that this industry is very pure, it's not, because there is. So when we say that, there's politics in one small place, but this industry is something which has maximum amount of politics, biases, everything, because the probability of income from this is way higher than any other industry. That's the reason pharmaceuticals are also one of the main industries which may contribute to research, or they end up funding research, because somewhere or the other they may have certain gains to that specific research. So yeah, I don't have any specific example that I can explain, but yes, conducting a research is not a child's play. It's something which is very, very stressful. There's a lot of funding required. That's why we see that most of the Indian institutes which contribute to research are very, very tied up when it comes to the funding part of it, because Indian universities again don't believe in providing funding for research, which is a very sad and unacceptable thing, but that's how it is over here. So there's a lot of biases, and everything that is every research that takes place, any material used in this research, or even if the research is not relevant to a specific field, any company may find a way that they can connect with the research, and then they'll either they'll go against the research and put it down, or they, as you said, the Coca-Cola example, they may contribute and bring about their own assumptions with the research, and may have their own gains. So it's very messed up out there.
Another very misleading fact that I'd like to get your opinion on and address is sample size. So I think for you this is common knowledge, but for a lot of our viewers out there, people don't know. When advertisements are shown on TV, or whenever a study is conducted, let's say a study is conducted on human nature, human behavior. Now there are 7.8 billion approximately humans that are living on the planet right now. But there have been billions before us, and there will be billions after us. Now, when you say something like 90% of humans think so and so, or have experienced this so and so, very important is to consider the sample size. Now, if you ask 10 people, and 90% of those people, 10 people, which means 9 out of 10. But what about the remaining 7.7 billion, 900 million? So how rampant is this practice, and how misleading it is at times?
Yeah, so one thing that I can give you an example is the clinical trials that were conducted for the vaccine production of COVID. So it's very hilarious when recent times there was a research that in 1-2 months, so the clinical trial had just begun, and they claimed that in 2 months the vaccine is going to be ready. But when it comes to any clinical trial, the first step is always using it on animals. Once that is done, then they are used on a smaller sample of humans, and once that is done, then you have a larger sample of humans that are used. The sample size gets larger, and then it's a very long procedure to complete a clinical trial and get a result out of it. So sample size is something which is very important whenever whenever any research is conducted, and if people read the research and they try to conclude something with the research, it's very important that the researchers mention that as per their study, this is what they have analyzed and this is what they've understood, and this is what they do in practice. No one or none of the authors, unless of course they are frauds, they would say that this is what we conclude, this is applicable to the entire universe. It doesn't work that way. So that's the reason sample size is something which is very important, and when people claim something about the study that they've conducted, they claim that only on the basis of the sample of humans they have taken. They do not claim on the basis of the entire universe And if that is done, then the place where these manuscripts get published is supposed to be responsible for this, because this is something which has to be checked before the manuscript is out in the public.
I'm glad you mentioned clinical trials, because this reminded me of something interesting that I just discovered recently. So when the clinical trials for all the vaccines were going on, I wanted to volunteer to go, and
That's amazing.
Yeah, and because a friend of mine in Dubai had gotten paid, I think it was 1,000 dirhams, which is approximately 20,000 rupees, to volunteer for when the Moderna vaccine was going on. So I was like, okay, anyway, I wanted to go for it regardless of the money, but I was like, if I'm going to make money out of this, great. Then I found out that in India, by law, the government of India prohibits any company, any research organization or facility from offering money for any study whatsoever to anybody in India. And there's a reason for that, because India is considered a developing country. And let's say if tomorrow a company comes out and says, this, we're trying a vaccine or anything, trying a medicine, but these are the side effects and you might cause harm to yourself, or there's a possibility or a probability that you might die. In India, I'm sure 1,000 or even 100,000 people will opt for it, given
irrespective. Yeah.
So that is a reason that is something that I did not know
That
about.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense actually. But yeah, it's extremely commendable that you wanted to volunteer for a clinical trial, especially in this condition, because clinical trials have.
No, my mom didn't let me. That's another story.
But yeah, but really it has adverse side effects, and because it is something new, you don't know what's going to happen, so this is something I would say that is very sensible that India has taken up, that is, they don't go favor the use of money, because what you said is correct. If money is offered, people are just going to go behind it irrespective, and they're not going to consider what is going to happen to their health. So I'm glad that this is actually being considered.
Okay, so the company that you're working for, how long have you been working here for, and how did you manage to secure a job here, or like how did it work out basically?
So it's a very funny story. I was working with Emcure pharmaceuticals before this organization, and I was very fed up over there because of the usual pharmaceutical politics that were there.
Please elaborate on the usual pharmaceutical.
Oh, that's like an endless story. I think we're going to have another podcast for that.
It's okay. Just try and summarize it, because when you say usual, it's not usual for us and the viewers. So please.
So pharmaceuticals in India have a very weird stigma that they don't take women in the organization. Why? Because there's a lot of work in pharma companies, I don't deny, and that work is lab work, that work is so there's no differentiation, there's no gender differentiation in pharmaceuticals when it comes to giving work. Okay, so when I used to work as well, I used to carry samples of 3-4 liters in my hand, and I actually lost a lot of weight when I was in that organization, because I had to keep walking, like half day I was just sampling the water and doing microbiological testing of the water they used to make the medicines. But so in short, there's a lot of work that pharmaceutical industries have. If a woman works over there, first concerns that they have is the timings. Okay, I understand that if we are in a place which is not very well developed, like let's say Nagpur for example, okay, it is very well developed, I'm not saying it's not developed, but the mentality of people living, for example in Nagpur, might not be that everyone allows their children to work till late. So the shift timing is something which is very important. The second consideration that they have is a woman getting married. So what they think is, more than the woman thinking about her own future, pharmaceutical companies think about it and calculate it quickly, so they think, okay, she's engaged now, she's going to get married in the next 2 months, and she's going to have a child in the next 1 year, and if she gets a child, she's going to go on maternity leave and eventually leave the organization. So why should we invest in her growth? That's the thinking that pharmaceutical industries have. I'm very glad I have this opportunity to speak over here and to point out that the fact that serum industry is also Serum Institute is one of the industries which do not allow the use, or they do not allow women to work there. And I'm really keen to know why, because I don't understand what is it that restricts women to work over there, and why do they have a policy of taking only men. So if anybody would shed some light on that, I'll be grateful to that person. So that's something which I want to know. And this is a stigma that pharmaceutical industries have, that they do not hire women. In Pune, Emcure is the only pharmaceutical industry which I know of that hires women. But when we go other places, there are many industries everywhere, but they do not encourage the hiring of women. And even if they do, they make sure that women don't do lab work. Again, I have no answer to this. Why? They can do administrative work. So if a person invests in studying masters in whatever subject, if they want to join a pharmaceutical industry, they have to do it at the base of doing an administrative job, which is completely unfair. So yeah, if you or anybody has some light on this, please.
I don't have an answer for that, but I can just say that the companies that have this policy, or pharmaceutical companies in general, are in fact missing out.
Exactly.
Because I feel like women are more superior than men in almost most aspects. I am surrounded by so many incredible, talented, smart women. Videographer, editor, the entire person behind the camera is a girl, a woman, Nikita Thadani. My mom, who's a literal one-man army, and who's your teacher, is a woman.
Yes.
And I am in fact a product, and the very fact that I have this opportunity to sit in front of the camera and have this platform is because of all the teachers that I had in school, which all of them were women. My elocution teachers. So I think it's in fact let them hire women. Let them hire men. It's their loss.
They are missing out.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine the pain of childbirth and having periods every month, which you guys do so effortlessly. And I can't even tell, looking by you guys, the amount of pain that y'all are in. And hats off to y'all, honestly. Anyway, you were telling us how you started, or you ended up working for this company. Yeah, so could you continue?
Yeah. So yeah, actually anyway, so yeah, from Emcure, because there was a lot of this politics happening, they were not letting me grow, they weren't giving me opportunities, so I decided to quit. And my friend was working in this organization, and she said this organization is so flexible, it's so chilled out, and she used to have like the time of her life, 9 to 6 job, that's it. And I used to wonder, why she's so happy. She also used to work with me in Emcure, but she left before me. So I was like, okay, just refer me, let's see if I get through. I want to try this part, because I was always very headstrong on the fact that I want to do lab work. And because my aim was that I do lab work and then I get into PhD. So, this organization was just like a stopgap. And I thought, I'll figure out something in the meanwhile. I mean, when I'm working, I didn't want to sit idle. So I just took a break for 1 month, and then I was like, I need to start working. So, then she referred me here, and then I got through the interview, and it was a very brilliant process. What started off was, so I was taken directly into the team where we find reviewers, so I told you the whole peer review process. I had taken this job very leniently because, as I said, I wasn't serious about it. But what struck me first was a warning letter that I had received because of the number of customer complaints that I got in the process. And that's when I realized, okay, this is not as chilled out as I thought it was. So yeah, another motivation that made me come here was when I'd gone for the interview and I was walking on the floor. I saw that people were eating on the desk, and that's something. When I came from pharmaceutical, what we used to do is, we had a locker room, we had to change into the garments for the testing area and go. Keep the phone, no nail paints, no makeup, not even lip gloss allowed. And I was like, what a life we're living and everything. So when I came here, I saw people have applied all nail paints and they put makeup and they're eating on the desk. And I remember I saw one girl eating pomegranate on the desk. And I told my friend, why is she eating on a desk? She because we are not in Emcure, we are here. And this is a very flexible place. It allows everything. They don't have these specifications, of course. So that was another motivation that I joined, because it was like a cultural twist for me. So yeah, that's how the shift happened, and I learned a lot from this organization, and I've really been enjoying ever since I joined. So yeah, I'm very happy here.
I think, like you mentioned, there is still not a lot of awareness about biology and the field in general in India, and that is why parents push their children to pursue MBBS or become engineers. Do you think a major factor is because of the amount of employment opportunities that are available? and not only the amount or the number, but also the quality of employment that is available. So could you shed some light regarding the whole situation?
Yeah, so the awareness is low because the main contributing factor for this is the quality of education that we have over here. As I told you, this caste system is something which has always been there, but it's never been addressed. So in a way, it's good that people having so people, those who don't have too many provisions, they still have the ability to learn. That's amazing. But there are people on the other end who take advantage of this. So one very major factor for this is the lack of awareness that the people have what is happening in the education system, what is happening at the employment basis of this, because people are not very because people don't have the knowledge of what power these fields actually have. People don't want to put their hand into it, because it's a trial sort of a thing, right? So if it goes wrong, it's gonna have a great impact. That is there. I understand that is one condition or a criteria that has to be considered, but that doesn't mean that it should restrict a person from putting the hand into it. So the only scope, many people now also, if you ask them, that are you interested in biotechnology, microbiology, they're like, why should we take it? We don't have a clue what we should do after that. Because another drawback of the research area is that after you finish PhD, the scope of additional research, postdoc research is very slim. So when people can finish the PhD also, they ultimately end up into companies like ours. Like we have so many PhD, and that is because they don't have opportunities further. So in India, this is something which is extremely it's always been there, but in abroad it's not the case. So abroad people have another important factor is even the finance actually. So people have the provision to carry out their own research, to start their own thing, but in India this is missing. So this is again another important factor which contributes to the lower exploration of these fields.
You mentioned that you have a lot of people who have completed their PhDs and yet they are working in your firm.
Yes.
Is that a reason or one of the reasons why you haven't pursued your PhD yet?
Yes, to be very honest, yes. So I always thought that, doing a PhD and doing research, because I love studying. So I thought that that is one thing that will always keep me connected to my books and studying. And another thing, I would learn a lot. But when I started when I opened my eyes and I saw what's happening in the world around, I actually thought that it's just a fairy tale, and that's not how it works. Because as I told you, I wanted to pursue my PhD in lifestyle diseases, but again, to get the belief in that subject by the audience is something which is still being tried, that is one thing. So the funding to carry out the research, all the parameters, the place even to conduct the research is something which is very difficult to obtain. And even when we finish the research, who is going to put in their investment, or who is going to give you a hand to grow a little more with the research that you've conducted? You don't know, and the chances of getting that person or getting that amount of investment or everything is very less over here. So you need to have a very strong financial background if you want to pursue something like this over here. You need to have a very strong network, because as I said, even in PhD, women getting into it is very difficult, because you need to have strong contacts. The other way that you can only get into PhD is the caste. If you have the caste, you may get into it. But further to that, if you want to pursue a little more into it, you need to have very strong networks, because without networks, you can never go ahead. So that's the...
So to get around this problem, how viable is going abroad? And is that something that is easy? Is that something that you've considered? Is that something that is open to people who have or want to pursue their PhDs?
Yeah, so the thing is that because I'm over here, I can give you a better picture of what I've seen over here. Abroad looks bright and shiny, but I don't know what are the drawbacks. See, this networking thing I told you, it's applicable worldwide. So you need to have a good network. You need to be in the good books of your mentor, because without that they are not going to take you ahead. And a mentor is someone who is in a position who can actually decide whether you go ahead in the research or they can send you back to where you've come from. So that is something which is very that is considered worldwide, that I can say. Abroad, PhD scope of education is higher as compared to over here. And another thing that you need to have very strong is your finance in place. If you have a strong financial background, you can go abroad. Of course, there's scholarships. Again, for scholarships, you need to have a sharp mind and you need to have the intelligence. Good thing that abroad universities offer is a full-time scholarship. So people, the last I read was anybody getting above 60% is also eligible for a 75% scholarship abroad. That would be 75% of the tuition fees, which is quite a lot as compared to what India can provide. So these things are something which is very flexible when it comes to studying abroad. And Europe currently is booming with the need of microbiologists. So anybody who would be interested can surely apply in these universities, Europe, Sweden, and all these places who are very open in taking students for PhD, and they do provide full scholarships. So
what is the reason that Europe has a need or want for so many microbiologists?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the reason is, but because this area of study is not very famous in countries like Europe, that's the reason this has just started off over there, and that's the reason there is more need to understand what is it in this field that makes it so important. So that is one of the main things that I can say. But apart from that, I am not aware of any other reason that they want.
Okay, so you're very blessed that you found an organization that you like working in and that you like doing what you do, and it sounds very interesting.
Yes.
But what does a typical day or an average day in your life or your work life look like? Right from the time that you wake up to that you go to bed, like could you just give us a brief overview?
So a typical corporate term is logging in. That's what we do. So as soon as we wake up, there are many meetings lined up for the day.
Which is what time? Because you mentioned there are shifts, right? So you're a night person that we spoke off camera. So
yeah.
So I think that's an important thing that people need to know, that if that the time that you work and the time of the day that you work is something that you might have to change and be really flexible about if you foresee a career or a future for yourself in this field, right?
Yeah.
So what time do you wake up? And it's not by choice, right? You were a morning person and now you've become a night person because of the timing of the time of your work. So
yeah, so we used to have shifts, but now from work, since we're working from home, we don't have any shift. It's 9 to 6. But we had a shift from 2 to 11 in the night, and the other shift was 6 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and they were rotational, of course. So I now by default have to wake up early because I do yoga. So I have to wake up early, and once I'm done with that, I log into my system at around 9 o'clock and then start with work. So it depends entirely on the workload and the number of meetings you have lined up through the day. That so sometimes my work gets done at 3 o'clock. Sometimes it lasts up till 12 o'clock in the night. So it completely depends on that. Again, the workload would be proportional to the number of manuscripts we are receiving. So we are taking up newer journals into the organization. So there's a lot of ramping up and there's a lot of workload that has increased. So yeah, based on that, the timing is determined.
How do you unwind, and what is it that you do in your free time, or how do you spend majority of your free time?
So when I was a subject matter expert, I used to have a very fun life, just 9 to 6, everything is okay. But since I became the team coach or the trainer, I used to get so tired talking because I had to constantly take trainings that I used to just zone out, like I used to space out from everybody. I used to just sit in one place, not look into the phone, not do anything, and just sit. I don't know how much that would make sense to other people, but I always it's become a habit now that I don't talk to people. Like weekdays, I don't like to talk to people, even my friends, even my closest friends. I don't even want to text them. I don't want to talk to anybody about anything. I just want to be quiet. Because I'm like, so done talking to people, and I hate socializing, right? So this is something, because I overdo it throughout the day, I just want to like space out. So I just sit by myself and just, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Now, again, this is a two-part question, something that I ask most of the guests that we have on the show. Where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? And where would you like to see yourself in the same time period?
So where do I want to see myself should be on where would I want to see myself, meaning I want to make that happen, that I see myself in that place 10 to 15 years. So I see myself as, it's very typical, right? I want to be successful, I want to live abroad, and I aspire to do something in the same field and make sure that I can bring about at least a tiny bit of change in whatever is currently present. So I aspire that in 10 to 15 years I should reach to that level where I have that capability that I can bring about a change, at least a little bit of change in the whole field or the community. So yeah, that's that.
Now, this might be a tricky one. That's for you to decide, and that your answer will decide. We know that it has been established that you chose what you're doing right now because you really gravitated towards it from an early age. But when was the first time that, again, two-part question, when was the first time that you knew that biology was your love? And if you were not a microbiologist, what would Nikita Thadani be today or doing right now with her life?
So what made me interested was evaporation. When we had learned evaporation in school first, that's when I started actually thinking, and we were made to do this experiment in school when we were very young, that we had a bowl of water and we were made to keep it at the window, and our teacher said that, you keep it here, leave it here, and you come tomorrow and see how much water is left, or is it left or it's not left. So I was very keen and I was very eager the next day to go and see, is water left or what is there, and I went and saw that the level of water had actually reduced. But now that I think of it, the sun was not that much it was a gloomy day actually, so the evaporation level was not that much, but it was there. So that's when I thought that, how this is magic, that where did the water go, did someone drop it and all. And then I started understanding. So then when we started reading, learning a little more about these things, that's when I understood that this is something which really interests me. And as I said earlier, that's to hold my attention is that I need to understand the thing. So the more I understand something, the more I get more excited and more inclined to learning it. So that's how I was determined to work in this field or to choose this field. If it wasn't for this, I would have been a doctor, because I've always wanted to be a doctor. I've always wanted to save lives. I love animals more than humans, but to confess, or I hate to admit, but I wouldn't be able to do veterinary because seeing animals dying and all of that is something which I cannot deal with. So I would rather be a doctor, since I have little less love for humans, but I have that much love that I can save them. So yeah, I'd really like to do that, and that's something which really interests me. So yeah, I would be a doctor.
So if you would have passed your second exam and not missed out by those 2 marks or 2 points, you probably would have been a doctor right now.
Yeah, maybe, yes.
And I would have introduced you as Dr. Nikita Thadani.
Wow, I love that.
Okay. Anyway, so let's go back to the previous answer that you gave. And a few people who watch this or will watch this, and generally a lot of people find, the things that are around us and the things that we take for granted very funny.
Yeah.
The fact that you found something as basic or normal in our life, people would call it as evaporation, fascinating, is what gravitated you towards science.
Yeah.
And what is science? Science is the field, basically the explanation of everything, the why and the how and the where of
absolutely.
everything. And I think that's the beauty of it. Nothing is taken for granted, and there's a reason for everything, and it's incredible, and it's so beautiful that you still have that passion and that devotion towards science, and that you still want to learn. And the only reason why you're not pursuing a PhD is because of the unfortunate conditions of the country that we're living in right now.